Hello, you're listening to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Monday, the 17th of February, or what's left of it anyway, and I just thought I'd do a little video regarding the events of both Stony Batter and Grafton Street last Sunday morning, and I just thought I'd put a couple of things together for the purpose of this video. And the first is here about the defence budget for Ireland. Now, at the moment, Ireland has, I think, 8 naval vessels, of which they can only put 1 to sea at any one time, possibly 2, due to lack of crew. So, and as somebody said to me one time, that the equivalent of area that the Irish have to look after is the equivalent of 1 police car for the whole of Ireland. Imagine that. So I just thought I'd put that there, and you can read through some of the figures. Now, if you compare this to the overseas aid budget, which was brought up there in October 2024, the expectations for 2025 is in the region of 2 billion. Imagine that. So 2 billion in overseas aid. And then you add the cost of international protection, which you can see here. So it's expected to 2.75 million per day, and it's the cost over 1 billion. So there is enormous sums of money involved in this, and I think it's about time that we had a Minister for Defence and other ministers took the security of this country very seriously. And having a minister want to talk about his gender pronoun really doesn't inspire me. Or I don't think it's particularly cute to have a defence minister who thinks it's funny to go into work with 2 different coloured shoes. And it's interesting to read through some of the comments here as well, that I don't think people were too impressed with this either. So really, I think Mr. Harris should realise that first and foremost, he is a politician and he's not there to be popular. Now, I suppose the other thing I wanted to bring up here was this statement from this guard before Christmas, that no such thing as an unvetted migrant coming into Ireland, which I find very interesting, is completely different from the statement made by Jim O'Callaghan, who was now Minister for Justice. So the things that Jim O'Callaghan said in an interview on RTE on Sunday are basically what people who have shown concerns about what's going on in this country have been saying for a long time. So does that mean now we have a Minister for Justice who's actually far right? Now, I've known about the existence of this document for quite a while now, but this is an official UN document, I think released in the year 2000, and it's about replacement migration as a solution to declining and ageing populations. If you think of the cost of living it is in this country, the cost of accommodation, the cost of childcare, housing, everything that is just become so expensive that it's actually, in my opinion, affecting the birth rate in this country. And along with other countries, it is using replacement migration to make up the difference. And this article here on the Irish Times from Wednesday of last week, talking about that. That's probably behind the page. Oh no, we can read it through there.
And on the subject of migration, you spoke in recent days about bringing in a faster, stricter system to process asylum applications. You want a turnaround time of 6 months or less, and you talked about chartering planes to deport people out of this country. How many asylum seekers are forecast to come into Ireland this year?
Well, 18,500 came in last year. My department very hard to be certain about it, but envisages it'll be somewhere between around 15,000. That's what they're looking at this year. In terms of the issue, like we need to focus on the fact, and I have to be straight with the Irish people. Too many people are coming to Ireland seeking international protection who are not entitled to international protection. Last year, 14,000 applications were processed, and at first instance, over 65% were rejected. This year already, in January, over 80% of applications were rejected at first instance. So I have to be honest with people and say that we have a situation where there are too many people seeking international protection who are not entitled to it. And the people who are really suffering from that, of course, are the people who are legitimately entitled to claim it, who may not be provided with accommodation because of the numbers that are coming in. So that's an area I'm not going to shy away from stating. But in order for it to be given effect, we have to have a procedure which recognises that if you come in and you're granted international protection, you stay, you're welcome. If you come in and you're refused international protection, you leave, you're gone.
The previous government announced plans to build or buy at least 6 asylum accommodation or reception centres. Is that your plan, your intention as well?
Well, we need accommodation centres for the persons who are coming in. But what I'm not going to do, and I know Colin Brophy, who will be Minister with me in Migration, agrees with me in this, we're not going to sit down and say our function now is to just create as many accommodation spaces as possible. We have to look at what is the driver of accommodation. And the driver of the accommodation needs is the ever-increasing number of people coming in seeking international protection. So we're going to focus in respect to that. In terms of what you say, like I was out in City West the week before last, and that is an example of the type of centre that is working well and which we should try to have in place around the country.
So
and rather than building places, I think the preference should be to buy places.
So, okay, is it still the plan then to buy 6 centres?
The plan is to buy a series of centres around the country. That's correct.
Okay, and the number?
I'm not going to finalise that yet. I don't want to start talking about commercial transactions that the state's going to enter into. But it is obviously much cheaper if the state owns the accommodation centres as opposed to giving vast amounts of money to people who own them and that were premises that were not designed for that purpose.
All right. There is uncertainty about Ukrainians who are currently being accommodated in this country, in people's homes and in their properties, for which the government pays people €800 per property. That scheme comes to an end at the end of the month. Is that going to be extended?
Well, I've discussed that. I'm going to just say in respect of it, that is a function which still remains with the former Roderick O'Gorman's department.
Department of Integration,
I'm not trying to shy away from it, but just legally it remains there. But I've spoken to the Taoiseach about it. I've spoken to the Taoiseach about it. I don't want to preempt any government decision. I've spoken to Minister Foley, obviously, and Colin Brophy about it. There will be changes made in respect of it. I just do not want to announce here a decision that has yet to be made by government.
When will it be made?
Oh, it'll have to be made before the end of this month.
All right.
Cases, as well as people arriving into Ireland with no valid travel documentation. Human trafficking is a huge concern, Detective Chief Superintendent Aidan Minnock, the head of the Garda National Immigration Bureau, told the Irish Independent. The GNIB have identified a number of facilitators in Ireland linked to international organised crime gangs who facilitate the arrival of extremely vulnerable people who are trafficked into the country. In 2023, the GNIB conducted investigations in relation to 18 individual human trafficking facilitators, and 29 criminal charges have been brought in relation to people smuggling offences resulting from these organised crime investigations. There was a 40% increase last year in detections of individuals, according to the senior officer, in relation to these serious offences. 26 people prosecuted, 41 charges initiated before the courts. In terms of people smuggling networks, they have a number of services provided to them by various criminal groups and networks. That ranges from people involved in cyber, that is the advertising of services to smuggle people into the country using social media and other platforms. Other criminal groupings are involved in the production of false and forged documents such as passports and visas. Then other criminal networks are trying to exploit legitimate companies involved in the transportation or accommodation of people. They can try to exploit employees within these companies to facilitate the movement of people. Essentially, they are involved in corruption. They resort to violence to exploit people. They're trying to exploit the most vulnerable people in society, Detective Chief Superintendent Aidan Minnock explained.
Now, I don't think I've ever seen such a political somersault by any political party, that what we have been saying all along with our legitimate concerns has now been taken up by the Minister for Justice compared to Helen McEntee when she was Minister for Justice. Now, I suppose the other thing I wanted to bring up was a report that I found out about a link between crime and migration from Sweden, which was produced late last year. But this is a briefing about the Parliament to debate increase in gang violence in Sweden. And seemingly, from the month of January, there was 29 explosions that took place during the month of January. Explosions are usually in the form of hand grenades and improvised explosive devices from rival drug gangs. And here's a story from Aftonbladet. 6 explosions in 24 hours there during January. And a lot of the crime has actually been committed by children between the ages of 14 and 16 who know that they can't be treated as adults, and that includes murder, rather shockingly and sadly. Now, this is the document I was talking about here, Multiculturalism in Flames, and it's from October 2024, and it's a 48-page document, and what I'll do is I'll leave a PDF of it in the comment section below, and I have a print out of it myself, and it does make quite astounding reading and very worrying reading. So this is Ireland's future if a handle isn't got on this. As I said, we give so much money in overseas aid, surely that should include a return policy for people who are not suitable, deemed successful in their application to stay here. All people coming in should be fingerprinted and tested for infectious diseases and criminal records in countries of origin. So maybe that would be a good start. And to fine all airlines that allow people into the country that come off a plane without documentation, maybe somewhere in the region of €20,000 per person. It might help in slowing this progress down. Well, there are a couple of comments which are my own. Thanks very much for listening. And I always try to reply to all those who comment, who take the time to comment underneath. Good night, good luck, and God bless, and God save Ireland. Actually, I have one more thing to show you. This is a painting done by my friend Emmanuel of Donald Trump, which I think is an extraordinary likeness. So I've sent Mr. Trump an email. I'll be very interested to see if I get a reply. But there's a painting of Mr. Trump waiting in Ireland if he decides to come over. Or be nice to see. I just think it's a cracking painting. Well done, Emmanuel. And thanks for your friendship as well. And I think I'll end with a quote from Aldous Huxley, who wrote his book Brave New World. And it certainly is. Good night, good luck, and God bless.